Head over to BoardGamePrices.com to find the best prices for Essen releases and thousands of other games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and the 2018 Essen Spiel Fair is almost here, so it's time to do my top 10 anticipated games for that fair. Now in addition to that, we're actually going to be having a contest in conjunction with this video as well with Gametoppers. Many of you know that Gametoppers is all about upgrading your game experience with these amazing Game Toppers, and now with some new game totes to hold your games. So I'm going to be talking about a contest towards the end of this video and how you can enter it, but without further ado, let's get started with my top 10 most anticipated games coming out at Essen.
Number 10.
All right, number 10 is Pandemic Fall of Rome. Now, I like Pandemic in general, and I know they've come out with many versions, over the last handful of years and such. This one, I like the historical theme of it. And it's also co-designed by Paolo Mori, who's done Ethnos and Libertalia and Rise of Augustus and Unusual Suspects. So I'm really wanting to see what he's helped add to this with designer Matt Leacock. Now in this one, they've got some differences. It feels similar obviously to Pandemic in general, but there's definitely some differences. Whether sometimes you're either trying to ally with different tribes, which are the cubes. They're not diseases. They're different tribes that are coming through and trying to take down Rome. So you're either trying to ally with them by doing similar things like bringing up same colored cards, kind of like how you would cure diseases, or you can annihilate them and get them off the board. But you need legions with you in order to take them off, and you'll bring some legions on, and depending on how many are there, shows you how many dice you can roll, and then depending on the dice rolls, you can possibly remove some of those tribe members, but you might end up removing some of your legions as well. So it definitely has a different feel to how you actually get those different cubes off the board by annihilating them. In this case, the dice might actually also trigger a special roll ability for some, and for different rolls that are good at fighting, it's good. For different rolls that are not, it's bad. So that brings an interesting element to it. Now event cards have two choices. There's a more powerful one that helps you like decline Rome, which it kind of works like an outbreak counter. And there's definitely a new way of the cubes coming out, how it sort of strings along from one area and goes back down. So there's definitely a lot of new stuff here that I just want to check out. So I'm looking at this new version of Pandemic that will be at Essen, the Fall of Rome.
Number 9.
My number 9 is Azul Stained Glass of Sentra. Now this is not an expansion to Azul, this is a standalone game in that sort of Azul universe. Now I liked Azul, it was fine for me, I didn't like it nearly as much as everybody else has, but this one seems even more interesting to me. It does use a lot of the main mechanisms of the original Azul with the different factory tiles, and you're pulling the tiles from all of one color off one and pushing the other ones to the middle, or grabbing all the same one from the middle. So that part of it is very similar to the original. But now, when you're placing these tiles, you're placing them on these randomized like column strips. And you can only place them where your pawn is or to the right of that. Your pawn's going to be moving down, so your choices are going to get a little bit harder and a little bit more depth to that on there. Also, when you place into a strip, you cannot place, to the left of where that pawn is, and it's really going to change the way you think. Also, when you're trying to complete a column, there's certain rounds that's randomized as to what color will score you extra points, and so you're also trying to finish columns that have a lot of that color. So there's definitely a different like timing aspect to this. And when you do score, you're not only scoring points for that column, you're also scoring points for columns that you've completed at least once before to the right of that. So there's just it doesn't sound like a huge amount of differences, but when you read through the rules of this, it does make it seem like there's a lot of subtle changes that will add a lot of depth to this. Also, instead of taking your glass, like normal, you can reset your pawn, sort of resetting your options as to where you're placing them. So it definitely seems like it has more depth, more about timing, and it seems to me to be a lot more interesting than the original. Maybe not quite as streamlined. It does still seem pretty easy to understand the rules, but I think I like so far from the sound of it what they've added here, and that's the new version of Azul.
Number 8.
My number 8 is called King's Struggle. This is from WizKids. It's designed by Robert Burke. Now this game mixes trick-taking with negotiation, and I love both of those things. Every card has an optional action that you could possibly negotiate to use or not use against other people. And so, the actions that you take and the negotiations that are for now are binding, but you can negotiate future deals that are not binding. And I love that in negotiation games. Everyone's going to play a card kind of like a trick, and then the highest power, where different things might modify those, wins the trick. But the interesting thing is tied cards get removed first to see who wins. So you could be doing some things, have some abilities, play modifiers that will help you cause other people not to win by making them tie, and then you might be able to slide it and win that. I think that's really cool, and I bet you a lot of the negotiation has to do with doing sneaky things like this. Plus, for the end of the game, you're either trying to win the same types of cards or try to get runs of cards of different values, like 2, 3, 4, 5, things like that. And the more you do those two different things, the more endgame points you're going to get. And it sounds really cool, and that is King's Struggle from WizKids.
Number 7.
My number 7 is a follow-up standalone game to a 2-player trick-taking game that I absolutely loved, that I think is the most underrated, underappreciated 2-player trick-taking game out there. It doesn't have a whole lot of wide distribution in North America. That's probably why it's not as well known, but I raved about this. Originally, it was called Claim, C-L-A-I-M. It's designed by Scott Alms, coming out by White Goblin Games. Well, this one is Claim 2. So it's based on that sort of 2-player trick-taking games where the first half of the game, you're playing cards, tricks, to win the card that's in the middle of the table. And so you're going to be winning cards, and then the second half of the game, you take the cards that you won in the first half, and then you play normal trick-taking with it. But each of the cards, there's different factions, and each of those factions have a special ability when you play them, and the original was amazing. It's my favorite 2-player trick-taking game, and it's only a 2-player game. But now you have all these different factions. You now have I think 5 new factions. So it has a separate game on its own, but you can also mix it with the original and mix some of the factions. So lots of replayability. Also, you can now combine it with the original Claim game and play a 3-player or a 4-player partnership game. So man, I am really excited about this, and that is Claim 2.
Number 6.
The next one is from 2F Spiel, also coming out by Stronghold in North America. It's designed by Freedom and Freeze. It's called Futurepia. This is a Freedom and Freeze zero-luck economic game, and that just makes me smile. I love economic games. I love Freedom and Freeze's games, and this just seems to be right up my alley. You're trying to have your development allow the people to have the most freedom by not working. So you're trying to allow people just to be free and have their own, their condos basically produce food and energy for them so that they don't have to do it and they can just do the things they want to do. Cool theme. You're trying to be balancing energy, production, using robots, and having enough food for everything to run. So the efficiency of this sort of reminds me a little bit, and I've only just read through the rules, I haven't played this or anything, but it reminds me of sort of like the efficiency of Power Grid Factory Manager, which was like a spin-off game of Power Grid that isn't that popular from what I hear. Like, I don't hear a lot of buzz, people still talking about it. It's an older game, but it's one I loved a lot because all about being efficient about the amount of production and the amount of stuff you could store and getting things out and using robots to run things, and it just kind of reminded me a little bit of that. But I love economic games. I love Freedom and Freeze's games, and this one I just can't wait to try it and check it out, and that is Futurepia.
Number 5.
My number 5 is called Passing Through Petra. Now, this is with my dream team, really, Renegade Game Studios and designer Alex Cavern. And together, they have done awesome games like Sentient, Prowler's Passage earlier this year, this awesome 2-player game, World's Fair 1893. Now, Alex's designs tend to be pretty abstracted, pretty thin on theme all the time. But him and I have actually a very interesting but tied together backgrounds. We both deal a lot with like computers and statistical things and things like that. And so his background, I listened to an interview of how he thinks and how he learns about his games from his work and his work from his games, and I feel the same way too. So our brains sort of work the same way, so I tend to like his games. Now this, you're taking different trader tiles and you're bringing them into your own personal markets, and that's pushing other traders that you used to have into your own settlements. And then you're doing different things like moving, having those settlements the people in those settlements sell things, trade, and move up different progress tracks depending on how many you have in that settlement and how many on your board. So it's an abstracted way of trying to do different things. But you're gonna be moving up different progress tracks to do that, which give you different bonuses. You'll be able to hire villagers to get you different abilities. And you're trying to get these influence cards, which are private goals. And when you do these private goals, you're placing influence cubes out. And then, it's basically a race. You're trying to get 9 cubes out. The first one to do that wins. But it does seem like it's going to be one of those things where you're taking all these different actions to sort of massage how your traders come in, what kind of traders, what countries they're coming from, and being able to try as best you can to move around these progress tracks to give yourself abilities to do different things, but in trying to place these influence tokens as well. So it feels like a game of his. I've even just reading through just the rulebook. That's all I've done. But I'm pretty excited about it because he typically does things I really love, and that is from Renegade Studios and designer Alex Cavern. And it is called Passing Through Petra.
Number 4.
Number 4 is a game I actually did a preview for earlier this year. It's a reprint of a very older game. This one is called The Estates. It's from Capstone Games. I love stock games, and I love games where you can really mess with other people. And this does both of that. And it has a very interesting auction mechanism. So in this game, you're trying to own stocks of companies, and you're building these floors, like up three-dimensional sort of buildings, estates, and whatever company's colors at the top floor at the end of the game is going to be able to score. So you're going to be placing these big floor cubes, but you're getting them from an interesting auction mechanism where people will auction once around at how much they're willing to pay, and then the active player is either going to take the money and give that player the block to put on there, or they're going to pay the amount that last player said and they're going to take it themselves, similar to say like Ponzi scheme and such. I love that auction mechanism, so I know I'm going to love it here. But in this, basically there's a certain amount of rows and buildings that you could put in a row, and that can sort of change depending on the actions you take throughout the game. And it's really interesting because at the end of the game, a completed row will score positively for whatever stock matching the company is on top. However, if it's not completed, you'll score negatively. So there's a lot of ways to really mess people over in this game by also trying to figure out how to get the right stocks at the right time, get the right places, make sure it's on the top, things like that. So it seems like it's going to have a lot of player interaction, a really interesting auction mechanism that I love, and the stock game I always really love too as well. So that is The Estates from Capstone Games.
Number 3.
Number 3 is called Gingerbread House. It's coming out from Lookout Games, and it's designed by Phil Walker Harding, who recently designed Baron Park and Gizmos, and he's done Emotep, Cacao, like a handful of amazing games. Now this one reminds me even more about Baron Park because you are building your own little board. You're placing tiles on a 3x3 structure that's three-dimensional. You're going to be building them up. You're going to be, as you place tiles on top of things, you're going to be unlocking benefits, gathering different things, getting abilities, and that part reminds me of Baron Park where you cover something and you get an ability or a thing from it. You're going to be gathering different types of cookies, and you're going to be trying to use those cookies to trap bad guys. That's like an open pool of things that people are kind of going for to race to get those. But you can also reserve those guys and girls to put them in cages so that when you do have the right cookies, you can feed them to them and trap them. You're also trying to fill areas that get you bonus cards that are objectives for points. And you're trying to get set collections where some of these are humans or non-humans or good or bad. But it does give me the feeling of a little bit of a Baron Park, but with like just a different feel as well. So, and I loved Baron Park. I love Phil Walker Harding's designs a lot. Just seeing how the different mechanisms here work together, I think I'm really going to love this one. That's Gingerbread House by Lookout Games.
Number 2.
My number 2 is from Matago. It is Treasure Island. First of all, it's got Vincent Dutrait art, so it looks amazing. This is a one versus many game, and I love one versus many game. This is a deduction game, and I love deduction games. One player is Long John Silver, and they've hidden a treasure on the board somewhere, and all the other players are trying to find this treasure, but Long John Silver is trying to deceive others where he hid the treasure. So other people that are trying to figure out are taking actions and using deductions to try to figure out where they are. And Long John Silver is going to be giving clues throughout the game to all the other players, sometimes telling the truth, sometimes having things face down so they don't know whether they're telling the truth or not. So different ways of doing things. You're actually like using a compass to draw lines with a dry erase marker on a big board and trying to see how far you are from possibly the treasure. And some clue cards are more powerful that Long John Silver can use, but in order to use them, Long John Silver has to give out more powerful and more interesting clues to the other players. So it seems like it seems like it hits all cylinders for me. Deduction and one versus many and a cool pirate theme and drawing on the board, using compasses, moving around. This looks like it's going to be a ton of fun. That's Treasure Island from Matago.
Number 1.
All right, number 1. Before we say number 1, let's talk about the contest I talked about earlier. Gametoppers is a new sponsor of the show, and they wanted to run a contest in conjunction with this video. Many of you probably know Berkey from the Gametoppers. Well, they are all about upgrading your game experience, and I have a Gametopper. I've done a video for it. Basically, it makes you feel like you have a full-blown game table, but without the price of a big game table. They're going to be giving away 6 different things here. They're going to be giving away a $100 gift card to anything from GametoppersLLC.com. But they're also going to be giving away 5 Gametopper totes. This is a $25 value, and all these totes, they basically allow you to put your games in these and carry them to and from your game nights. I'm throwing up some images now so you can see what these look like. And there's many ways to enter. It's very easy to enter. I've placed a link in this description of the video that would bring you right to the contest. The contest is going to end the last day of Essen, October 28th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that is the contest. And now let's talk about my number 1. And so my number 1 is from Horrible Games, and it's called Alone. And this might seem like a very strange pick for me, because I'm not a person that likes dungeon crawlers, but I am a person that likes one versus many. I mean, my last one, number 2, is a one versus many. And I like deduction. I like kind of working together and against different people. Alone is an asymmetric dungeon crawler where one player is the hero versus everybody else. And the hero can only see a little bit at a time. The map is going to be growing as the hero is trying to figure out how to get out of this and finish different scenarios. There's many different scenarios you can build, many different maps you can build, but all the other players behind their shield can see the entire map. They see where the hero is going. They see what lurks behind the corners. The hero can ask questions to try to deduce locations of monsters and traps. And the heroes can try to get some upgrade cards and can kind of turn lights on maybe and see a little bit more. They actually can also get different characters that might come out. Some that might be hurtful to them. Some that might actually help them up. Lots of customized setups. So it just seems like a really interesting idea because I love one versus many as much as I do. And that whole aspect of like not seeing what's coming but everyone's against you, I think just gives this a really cool feel that I'm dying to try. And so that is my number 1 for Essen, Alone from Horrible Games. Well, I hope this helped you find out maybe some things that may not have been on your radar, or if they were, maybe you've learned a little bit more about them because I've done a lot of research over thousands of games to narrow it down to these 10. And for each of these 10, I've researched them a lot by even reading the whole rule books on a lot of these just so I get a gauge what these mechanisms are to bring these to you. So I hope this has helped. If you're going to Essen, check some of these out. Either way, this has been the Game Boy Geek, helping you find and enjoy the next board game you'll love. Upgrade every game you play with the ultimate gaming accessory, Gametoppers. Shipping now. Check them out at GametoppersLLC.com.